It's exploded. Eddie Howe didn't hold back after Alexander Isak's move to Liverpool. In just 3 words showed exactly what he thinks about the whole situation. You won't believe the tone he used. I'm Rodrigo, and you're watching Newcastle Mania, the channel made by a fan, for fans, who live and breathe Newcastle United. You blinked, and Newcastle was making headlines everywhere. Today we're diving deep into the saga that shook the fan base. Alexander Isak forced his way out for £130 million. Eddie Howe gave a surprising response, and Newcastle have already started reacting in the transfer market. There's so much for us to unpack. But first, just a quick word. If you love Newcastle and want to follow everything that happens with our club, hit that subscribe button right now. It costs nothing, helps massively, and makes all the difference in growing our black and white community. Alexander Isak is gone. After weeks of pressure, skipping training sessions and all the drama, the Swede finally forced his way out and now wears Liverpool's shirt. And what caught the most attention? The way Eddie Howe handled it all, and especially those 3 words he used to send his message without ever mentioning the rival by name. At his press conference, for the very first time since Isak's sale, Eddie Howe decided to speak openly about what happened. He began in a respectful tone, saying he loved working with a Swedish striker and that, during his time at Newcastle, their relationship was extremely positive. Howe made sure to remind everyone that the club played a huge part in Isak's development, helping him become one of the Premier League's most feared forwards, while also admitting that Isak himself had been vital in helping the team achieve historic milestones over the past couple of years. But right after that softer introduction came the moment that truly shook things up. Eddie Howe said that everything changed when the other club came in. Those 3 words, the other club, were enough to set the press conference on fire. Not once did Howe say the word Liverpool. And that was no accident. It was a silent, but very powerful, statement showing that he'd rather erase a rival from the narrative than give extra spotlight to a club that took away his main striker. That choice of words made it crystal clear that, for Howe, the turning point with Isak wasn't about performances. It wasn't about issues inside the dressing room. It was about outside interference. Up until that moment, the manager believed in keeping the partnership alive, believed that Isak was still motivated by the project. But the second Liverpool got involved, the player's mindset completely shifted. Howe admitted that communication became difficult, that the relationship was never the same again, and from that moment on the situation spiraled out of his control. And here's a fascinating bit. By not saying Liverpool's name, Howe managed to take a strong stance without sounding bitter or aggressive. He showed maturity. He sent a message to the fans and the media that he acknowledges what went on, but is not willing to put the spotlight on the rival. It's almost as if he was saying, "We move forward. They're not our focus." That kind of posture is rare in modern football, where managers often use press conferences to lash out at rivals or shift blame. Howe stayed true to his style, discreet but direct, and the fans picked up on it straight away, reading it as a mix of dignity and Newcastle pride. Of course, that statement landed like a bombshell across English football. The press conference had barely finished when it was already plastered all over the sports headlines. Howe avoids naming Liverpool after Isak's sale. The major papers highlighted Howe's coldness in the choice of words, interpreting it as a calculated move to show that, at St. James Park, the focus isn't on who's gone or who's taken a star player away. Some columnists even compared Howe's approach to other big-name managers in the Premier League. While coaches like Klopp, Guardiola, or Mourinho often get involved in open spats, Howe chose a completely different route. Sharp, concise, almost surgical. And that made his words feel even heavier. By refusing to say Liverpool, he let the silence speak louder than any accusation. On social media, the reaction was instant. On Twitter, Newcastle fans applauded Howe for standing his ground. Many said the manager showed respect to the club and the fan base by not giving Liverpool the stage. Others went further, seeing it as a message of pride. We don't need them. We go forward with players who want to be here. But not everyone saw it the same way. Some fans were still hurt by how Isak forced a move. The fact he went on strike, refused to train and distanced himself from his teammates to push the transfer through left a sour taste. Comments online showed the divide. Some understanding Isak for chasing what he thought was best for his career, others feeling he disrespected the club that gave him the platform and put him on the map. Even foreign journalists weighed in. On TV debates, some labeled Howe's phrase the other club as pure disdain, almost a silent provocation. Others saw it as Howe protecting Newcastle and refusing to turn the press conference into a mudslinging contest. And that brings us to the question for you, the fans. Do you think Howe got it right by refusing to name the rival, showing that Newcastle are bigger than any single departure? Or should he have confronted the issue head-on, called Liverpool out and made his frustration clear? This is one of those stories that tugs at the heartstrings and splits opinion right down the middle of our fan base. And the truth is, when we take a look behind the scenes of this whole saga, you can really see how heavy things got. It wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a process full of little cracks that eventually led to the final break. It all started way back in pre-season, when the squad was together in Austria. Newcastle were coming off a season of ups and downs, but with fresh hope of building a strong campaign in both the Premier League and the Champions League. And it was exactly at that moment that Liverpool showed up with that informal approach, a little backroom chat that, according to the English press, completely turned Alexander Isak's head. And the reaction was immediate. First, the striker didn't play in the friendly against Celtic, something that at the time was explained away as load management. But then, just days later, his absence from the Asia tour raised even more suspicion. While his teammates were sweating it out in training and friendlies, Isak was pulling further and further away, showing clear signs that something wasn't right. That's when things really soured. Once back in England, Isak simply refused to train or play. A silent strike, but one with massive impact. Just imagine the weight of that inside the dressing room. Teammates not really understanding what was going on, the coaching staff trying to keep everyone focused, and the board suddenly having to deal with one of their biggest stars forcing a way out. And it wasn't for lack of trying. Newcastle's hierarchy pulled out all the stops, direct talks, meetings with agents, even emotional appeals. The idea was to show him that the project had ambition, that he was still central to the plan for the season. But in the end, the pressure was too much. Liverpool didn't give up, Isak stood firm, and Newcastle were left with no choice. Either sell him now, for a British record fee, or risk keeping an unhappy, uncommitted player in the squad. And here's a detail that really stands out. Even with all this turbulence, Eddie Howe never lost his composure in public. Instead of complaining or pointing fingers, he chose to turn the page. He made it clear that the most important thing was protecting the group that remained, keeping the harmony in the dressing room, and sending a message to the fans that Newcastle marches on no matter who leaves. That approach from Howe is telling. He could easily have used a press conference to fire back, to expose details, to play the victim after losing a star. But no, he chose instead to reinforce the idea of continuity, of looking forward, of showing that the club is bigger than any one player. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all here. Even in the middle of a storm, Newcastle has to stay strong on its path of growth. Asterisk. The manager also made a point of stressing that there's no like-for-like replacement for Isak. He said every player has their own unique qualities, and it's not fair to compare whoever comes in with the Swede. And you know what? He's right. Newcastle have already reacted, bringing in Nick Woltemade, the 1.98M German from Stuttgart, and Yoane Wissa from Brentford. Two very different players to Isak, but ones who could give a completely fresh look to our attack. And Howe's stance of not naming the rival reminds me of other football stories. How many times have we seen managers refusing to give attention to the club that stole their star? It's a clear message. Newcastle won't bow down to anyone, not even the Premier League champions. It's almost as if Howe was saying, you can take the player, but the respect and greatness of Newcastle stays right here. Now the big question is, how will Newcastle react on the pitch without Isak? We already know Wissa won't make his debut straight away because of a knee injury, so it looks like Woltemade will start against Wolves. It's a completely new scenario for Howe to set up his attack. And of course, the fans are full of expectation. Will the German step up and take on that role? Will Wissa, once he's fit, carry the load? Or will Newcastle still need to bring in another reinforcement? At the end of the day, Isak has gone, but has also left a lesson behind. No player is bigger than Newcastle United. Eddie Howe, with just 3 words, showed respect for the club, stood firm in the face of the situation, and made it clear that life goes on. We've lost a star, yes, but we've gained an opportunity to reinvent ourselves. And that, my friend, might just be the fuel we need to take the next step. So tell me, what did you make of Eddie Howe's stance? Did you like the fact he didn't even mention Liverpool? Or do you think he should have been more open about Isaac's departure? Drop your opinion in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing about our Newcastle United. Thanks so much for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next video. Howe the lads!